One evening, something extraordinary happened that would change the course of history forever. A strange, bright light appeared in the sky, illuminating the horizon with an eerie glow. At first, people thought it was a meteor shower or perhaps a new scientific discovery. Scientists and experts scrambled to explain it, but as the light grew brighter and closer, it became clear that this was no ordinary event. By nightfall, the light had grown into a massive object hovering in the sky. It was a spacecraft of unimaginable size. The ship wasn't just large, it was enormous, dwarfing anything humanity had ever created. It blocked out the stars above, casting a shadow over the land. The entire world stopped what it was doing to gaze up at this mysterious vessel, unsure of what was about to happen. Soon after, the ship descended slowly, its landing creating a deafening roar. A wave of fear and confusion spread across the planet. The ship landed with a deep rumble, shaking the very ground beneath it. People in every corner of the earth stared in disbelief, wondering if they were witnessing the end of the world. As the ship settled, glowing doors on its surface opened, and beings began to emerge. These aliens, who called themselves the Zyphorians, had come to conquer. Their appearance was terrifying, tall, with grayish skin, long limbs, and otherworldly presence that radiated power. The Zyphorians were not here for peace. They were here to invade. The aliens unleashed their weapons on the cities around them, decimating entire populations. Their technology was far superior to anything humanity had ever known. Energy blasts shot from their ships, destroying buildings with ease. The world's military forces attempted to retaliate, but their weapons were no match for the Zyphorians' advanced tech. Cities fell, and millions of people were either killed or captured. For the first time in human history, humanity felt completely powerless. The Zyphorians demonstrated their dominance effortlessly. They had come with a singular purpose: to take control of Earth and its resources. The human race was helpless, caught in the overwhelming force of an alien species that seemed invincible. But amid the devastation, a small glimmer of hope began to shine. Some humans refused to accept their fate, while the rest of the world panicked. A group of brilliant minds from various fields, scientists, engineers, military experts, and ordinary citizens, began to work in secret. They knew they couldn't fight the Zyphorians with strength alone. They would have to fight with intelligence, cunning, and a deep understanding of the enemy's technology. The Zyphorians, though highly advanced, underestimated one thing: the resilience and creativity of humans. While they ravaged the planet, a plan was beginning to form, and a resistance was growing. As the night continued to deepen, the strange light grew brighter, casting an unnatural glow over the earth. By now, it was no longer just a bright light in the sky. It had become something far more menacing. The massive spacecraft, slowly descending, was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Its design was sleek yet intimidating, with surfaces that shimmered like liquid metal. The ship seemed to hum with a strange energy, vibrating the very air around it. Every inch of Earth felt as though it was being watched by an unseen force. The first sign of something truly terrible came when the spacecraft's lower section opened. From within, the ground began to tremble, and a booming, guttural sound echoed through the atmosphere. The doors of the ship slid open, revealing the alien invaders, the Zyphorians. They moved with an unsettling grace, their long limbs stretching out as they descended from their ship. The air felt thick with their presence, and their eyes, glowing with an unnatural light, scanned the surroundings with cold precision. The Zyphorians were not just an advanced species. They were conquerors. Their eyes held no mercy, no compassion. These beings had traveled across galaxies, conquering planets, wiping out civilizations, and taking everything in their path. Their mission was simple. Earth was a rich resource, and they would not hesitate to claim it as their own. The people on Earth watched in sheer terror as the aliens began their assault. The cities, once bustling with life, became silent, empty shells. Energy beams shot from the alien ships, disintegrating entire skyscrapers, turning the proud structures into dust. The air was filled with the sound of buildings collapsing, followed by an eerie silence. Those who tried to flee were either captured or destroyed in seconds. Humanity, once the dominant force on Earth, was now completely powerless. The military's advanced weapons, developed over centuries of war and innovation, proved useless against the alien technology. The Zyphorians' weaponry was beyond anything that Earth had ever encountered. Each blast from their ships left a trail of devastation, and no place seemed safe. In a matter of hours, the world was brought to its knees. Governments fell, military bases were obliterated, and major cities were left in ruins. Desperation set in as leaders of the world scrambled for answers, but there was no hope in sight. The Zyphorians had a clear advantage. Their ships were impervious to the world's most powerful weapons, and their technology made them virtually unstoppable. But despite the overwhelming odds, there were those who refused to give up. Deep within underground bunkers and secret facilities, scientists, engineers, and military strategists gathered in an attempt to find a way to fight back. They knew that any hope for survival lay in their ability to understand the alien technology and turn it against them. As the days passed, the Zyphorians continued their reign of terror. They were methodical, efficient in their destruction. Earth's population dwindled as whole regions were wiped off the map. However, as the Zyphorians advanced through the world, something unexpected began to happen. Hidden among the ruins, pockets of resistance began to form. These groups, initially small and disorganized, were made up of everyday people, soldiers, doctors, engineers, and ordinary citizens, who refused to let their world be destroyed. They began working together in secret, using whatever resources they could scavenge. They studied the alien technology, reverse engineering weapons from the wreckage left by the invaders. It was a long shot, but they knew they had no other choice. The Zyphorians, for all their power, had made one crucial mistake. They underestimated the human spirit. They assumed that humans would fall into submission, that they would crumble under the weight of their invasion. But humans were not so easily defeated. They had survived wars, plagues, and disasters. And now, in the face of an alien threat, they were willing to fight with everything they had. And so, the stage was set. The world, ravaged by alien forces, now found itself in the midst of a desperate struggle for survival. It was not just about saving the planet. It was about proving that humanity had the strength to rise against even the most insurmountable odds. As the Zyphorians continued their relentless assault on Earth, the hope of humanity seemed to flicker out. In the chaos, entire nations had crumbled, and the streets were filled with the remnants of civilization, burnt buildings, abandoned vehicles, and the haunting echoes of a world that once thrived. Yet, amid the devastation, there was a growing sense of defiance among the people who had survived. In hidden pockets across the planet, small groups of humans began to organize. These individuals were not military leaders or scientists. They were everyday people, farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers, and students who had survived the initial onslaught. They were united by a single goal: to fight back and reclaim their home. The first steps of the resistance were simple. They began to gather in small, secretive groups, moving in the shadows to avoid detection. They scavenged what they could, taking any supplies they could find from the ruined cities and devastated towns. Radios, computers, and old technology became their lifelines, allowing them to communicate and share information without alerting the Zyphorians. These makeshift communication systems were their only means of staying connected and coordinating their efforts. In the heart of one of the ruined cities, a group of survivors found an old military facility hidden beneath the earth. The complex had been abandoned for years, but it still contained valuable resources, old weapons, schematics, and equipment that could be repurposed for the Resistance's cause. It was there that the first serious plans began to form. Engineers and military experts, who had managed to escape the initial attack, began working together to reverse engineer the Zyphorian technology. The task was monumental. The Zyphorians' weaponry and machinery were beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Their ships defied gravity, and their energy weapons could disintegrate entire structures in seconds. But the human mind was resilient. Where the Zyphorians had underestimated humanity's strength, they had failed to account for one crucial thing: ingenuity. Scientists and engineers, working day and night, started to make significant progress. They took apart the wreckage of alien ships and began to learn from it. They discovered the inner workings of the Zyphorian energy weapons, and though they could not replicate them fully, they began developing their own weapons using the same principles. They created rudimentary force fields, electromagnetic pulses that could disrupt the Zyphorian technology, and makeshift weapons that could fire concentrated bursts of energy. These inventions were crude, but they were proof that humans could adapt and fight back. The Resistance also started to understand the Zyphorians' weaknesses. Through careful observation, they learned that the Zyphorians, despite their technological superiority, had a rigid, hierarchical society. Their communication was based on complex signals that could be intercepted and decoded. The Resistance's communications team, a group of tech-savvy survivors, managed to tap into these signals and began to understand the patterns. They even learned how to jam the Zyphorian signals, disrupting their ability to coordinate their attacks. With this newfound knowledge, the Resistance launched small, targeted attacks against the Zyphorians. They attacked supply lines, ambushed alien patrols, and sabotaged key infrastructure. Every victory, no matter how small, gave the people hope. Word began to spread, and more survivors joined the Resistance. What had started as a handful of brave souls grew into a full-fledged movement. The Zyphorians, who had once seen humans as weak and helpless, now found themselves facing an unpredictable and determined enemy. However, the Resistance was not without its challenges. The Zyphorians were relentless in their pursuit of any survivors, and they responded to each attack with overwhelming force. For every victory the Resistance won, the Zyphorians retaliated with terrifying efficiency. The cost of the war was high. Lives were lost, and entire communities were wiped out in the process. But with each battle, the Resistance learned, adapted, and grew stronger. In one of the largest underground bunkers, the leaders of the Resistance gathered. They had a plan, a dangerous but potentially game-changing mission. The Zyphorians had an energy core buried deep within their mothership, a core that powered their entire fleet and weapons. If the Resistance could destroy it, they would cripple the Zyphorians' ability to continue their invasion. But the mission was risky. It would require the Resistance to infiltrate the Zyphorian mothership, fight through heavily guarded corridors, and plant explosives on the core. It was a suicide mission for many, but there was no other choice. The Resistance knew that if they failed, the Zyphorians would crush them all. But if they succeeded, they could deal a decisive blow to the alien invaders. The plan was set in motion, and the Resistance mobilized for the mission. Every available soldier, engineer, and strategist was called upon to join the effort. The stakes had never been higher, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. In a world where everything seemed lost, where entire civilizations had fallen, the Resistance stood as the last hope of the human race. They had risen from the ashes, driven by a single, unwavering belief. They would not go down without a fight. The war for Earth had only just begun. The days leading up to the mission were filled with tension. The Resistance had gathered everything they could: guns, makeshift weapons, and stolen Zyphorian technology, preparing for the greatest assault in human history. The mission was simple in theory, but the risks were astronomical. A small group of specially trained Resistance members would infiltrate the Zyphorian mothership, destroy the energy core, and cripple the alien forces. But the path to success was fraught with danger. The Zyphorian mothership, a towering vessel that seemed to pierce the very heavens, was a fortress. It hovered ominously above the earth, its sheer size enough to make any soldier's heart race with fear. Its energy shield was impenetrable, its weapon systems nearly invincible, and its defenses were layered thick, with patrols of armed Zyphorian soldiers monitoring every inch of the ship. To get inside, the Resistance would have to be stealthy, precise, and incredibly brave. The plan was set. The Resistance had managed to infiltrate one of the Zyphorian command centers and learn the layout of the mothership. They knew where the core was located. Deep within the heart of the ship, guarded by the most advanced security systems the Zyphorians had at their disposal. They had developed a makeshift cloaking technology capable of temporarily jamming the Zyphorian sensors, allowing them to slip past the outer defenses. The team was small, only a handful of the best soldiers, scientists, and engineers who had spent weeks preparing for this moment. The night before the mission, the mood was somber. Every person knew that the chances of survival were slim. For most, this would be their final battle. Yet, in the face of overwhelming odds, there was a fierce determination in their eyes. These were people who had lost everything: their homes, their families, their cities. But they hadn't lost their will to fight. For them, This mission wasn't just about survival. It was about the survival of humanity itself. As dawn broke on the day of the mission, the team gathered in their underground base. The resistance leaders gave them a final briefing, outlining the mission one last time. There were no guarantees. They were about to face the enemy on their own turf, and only a few would make it out alive, if any. But the leaders made it clear failure wasn't an option. If they didn't succeed, the Zyphorians would reign over Earth forever, and humanity would be lost. The team, dressed in specialized suits that blended with the ship's surroundings, embarked on their perilous journey. They were dropped from an aircraft, their descent almost silent, the only sound being the wind rushing past. As they neared the mothership, the resistance members could see the full scale of the alien vessel for the first time. It was monstrous, a true testament to the Zyphorians' power. But none of that fazed the team. They had come too far back down now. Once on the ground, the team swiftly made their way toward the mothership. They moved like shadows, sticking to the edges of the ship, avoiding patrols, and keeping their presence undetected. Every step felt like an eternity. Their hearts pounded in their chests as they neared the ship's main entrance. They breached the ship through a hidden access point and immediately encountered their first obstacle, a guard patrol. Without hesitation, the resistance soldiers used their improvised weapons to silently eliminate the threat. The team moved deeper into the ship, navigating its cold, metallic corridors. The ship was eerily quiet, save for the occasional hum of machinery and the distant sound of alien chatter. They knew that time was against them. Every second they spent in the ship brought them closer to being discovered. As they neared the heart of the ship, the resistance members began to realize just how advanced the Zyphorians were. The ship's interior was a labyrinth of corridors, elevators, and chambers filled with strange, alien technology. But they had studied the ship's layout, and every move they made was calculated. They had one goal, to reach the core and destroy it. At last, they arrived at the core's chamber. It was heavily guarded, and the Zyphorians were more alert than ever. The team knew that this was their last chance. They split up into smaller groups, taking out guards silently and hacking into the core security system. The minutes stretched on as they worked to plant explosives that would destroy the core. Sweat poured down their faces, and the tension was palpable. The moment they had been waiting for finally came. With the explosives in place, the team triggered the countdown. The core began to pulse, its energy surging as it prepared to release its destructive power. The resistance members quickly made their way out, knowing that they had only a limited amount of time before the entire ship would go up in flames. The explosion was deafening. A massive shockwave ripped through the ship, sending the resistance members tumbling to the ground. The energy core had been destroyed, and the Zyphorians' ability to function was severely crippled. The ship began to shake violently, its systems failing one by one. As the resistance team made their way to the exit, they could hear the sounds of chaos echoing through the ship. The Zyphorians, now without their core, were losing control. However, their mission was far from over. The team had done what they set out to do, but the Zyphorians were not going down without a fight. As they rushed to escape, they encountered several last-ditch efforts by the aliens to stop them. But with the core destroyed, the Zyphorians were in disarray. The resistance team fought their way through the ship, determined to escape. In the end, only a handful of the team members made it back to the surface. The explosion had dealt a devastating blow to the Zyphorians, and their ships began to fall from the sky, crashing into the earth. But the war was far from over. The victory was hard-won, and there was still much to be done. The resistance had achieved the impossible. They had struck a blow against the seemingly invincible Zyphorians. Humanity's fight for survival had entered a new phase, and the people who had once been powerless now had hope. The battle for Earth had only just begun, but the resistance had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity could rise.